Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking the time to come to my session today. My name is Vanessa Chan. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about women in sales and cybersecurity. I'm a bit terrified in doing this, so I've chose to sit. And if I get up and walk around, I just wanted to make it as interactive as possible. Please, feel free to shout out anything that you feel the need to. But just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been in the business for about 20-ish years. I started at TELUS back in 2000 and whatever, whatever those years are. And I spent 13 years there as a inside sales rep in the first couple of years, and then an outside account manager working through selling telecommunications. It was such an exciting time back then because we were all competing against the only incumbent Bell at that time. So such fun times to kind of come in as somebody new. At that time, I realized I really enjoyed being in the technical field and being in sales primarily. I decided to make a move to Scalar Decisions, and I worked there for 4 years because they were growing a cybersecurity practice. Again, another wonderful, exciting, and new thing to talk about. Always evolving. And I don't know about the ages in this room, but I remember watching the movie Hackers way back when, and I thought, how cool is that? They're infiltrating systems and doing really cool and fun things and on skateboards. After Scalar, I joined a manufacturer called Nutanix to try to see if I wanted to explore the vendor world. It wasn't cybersecurity, and I realized very quickly that I wanted to move back into cybersecurity because the conversations were pretty boring. I then made a move to Symantec, and Symantec is a very short stint because they got bought out within months of me joining. And then at that point, I had to rethink what I wanted to do with my career, and I realized that I wanted to embark on the world of consulting, so I joined Deloitte for a couple of years. I was a partner in their Detect and Respond marketplace offering, building third-party partnerships, really helping build their business development side of the business around their managed services. This was all during COVID, and during COVID I realized I had to rethink my career because I'm a mom. I have 2 children, 13 and 11, and I realized that balance of life was much more important for me. Not to say Deloitte doesn't have that balance of life, but it was just a different avenue I wanted to take. And this is what led me to where I am today. I am at Microsoft. I'm a security specialist at Microsoft, and today is my 1-year anniversary with Microsoft. Thank you. But as I said, I'm a mom of 2 girls. I'm a mom of 2 cats, and also of a dog, so I have a busy life. And I like to do as many of the extracurriculars on the side as I can with my balance of life, that being yoga, traveling. I like to eat my heart's desire of what Toronto has to offer. And I'm hoping to embark and share with you guys some lessons that I practice on a daily, monthly basis within sales. But as I said, I'd love it to be interactive. I'm sure, for a lot of you, some of these practices are not new. I think sometimes it just serves as a reminder on, how you can conduct your personal and business life and achieving goals. One of the key items I practice on a personal and business aspect is making sure when I set my goals, I write them down. The reason why I do this, because I feel that writing down your aspirations really helps elevate the focus that you have in terms of making yourself accountable. Even if your goals seem obvious, like obviously in my role, my goals are pretty straightforward. Make and close a sale. Right? But I think, my view is to take it more granular than that. What if you need to understand, in order to achieve that goal, what if you need to understand the buying cycle a little bit further? Write that down. What if you need to understand whether or not that buyer has some personal objectives that also align to what you're working through. Write it all down. Research says that when you write down your goals, you have a higher percentage of achieving them. So why not? Write it down. Writing it down will also force you to be clear about what you need to do. And for me, it's a great motivator because it makes me feel that I've accomplished a task. And it also helps me measure my progress. About 7 months ago, I set out on a goal to be more engaged in working with women in cybersecurity. I also set out the goal to do more speaking engagements like this. So here I am. I wrote it down, and here I am. Although I don't know why I said yes sometimes and wrote down the goal, I did. One of the aspects that really pushed me towards doing this was, as I mentioned, I'm a mom. I have 2 girls, 13 and 11, and they often had told me that my job seems boring, uninteresting, and I just remember one of my girls coming home during COVID times and just saying, "You've been sitting there in the same spot since I left, all day on calls." And I realized that, I wanted to help fuel more energy into this field for younger ladies because it does seem boring, considering that we're competing against folks creating dances on TikToks and it going viral. So hopefully that's what we're all here to do today, to feel more energy into this field for many folks. I, as I said, would like it to be more interactive, and I'm going to just throw it out there. In terms of setting your goals and writing it down, do many of you practice that? Maybe a show of hands? That's great. Is there any aspect of setting goals that you would like to share, that anybody in the room would like to share with the rest of the group? Please. That's perfect. And for those not in the room, setting timeframes, making sure that you set, whether it's a 1, 3 month, year timeframe, and resetting your goals. That's perfect. That's actually great. I think it's going back to the old adage of New Year's resolutions, right? Some folks write it down and then they forget about it. So setting a timeframe is perfect in that context. The second aspect that and I'm sorry, I have notes. I feel like it's a TED Talk, and I hoped I memorized it, but I didn't. The second aspect that I practice pretty religiously is ensuring that, you're always curious, you're always asking questions, but you're ideally listening for the potential. I think one of the most difficult hurdles that we have as women, and I know I see some men in here, but I'm going to tackle the woman piece and say that, bias exists. And if, we're directive, we may be known as bossy, and that's known as a negative connotation. If we're put in leadership positions, maybe we're only there because of a diversity metric. If we're firm, maybe we're emotional. But I think the best way to overcome many of these is to always be curious, ask the questions, and essentially help you unravel why. Find ways so that you can understand and listen for the potential to help change the perspective. I think when you're curious and asking questions and sort of taking and removing yourself from some of the biases, it really will help you empathize in understanding why people feel a certain way or have a view of that in that context. But you can take this in whole other levels. I applied this in a previous role where I was looking for many different sales positions, and one of them being a proposal writer. What I found difficult was finding someone that understood cyber, but was able to write about it and make it interesting, and essentially not writing it the same as everybody else. In a pool of recent cybersecurity graduates, I started reviewing and speaking to many different people, and there was a gentleman looking for a change in his career. I was intrigued. He was actually entering the field in his late 30s, early 40s, completely changing what he studied and what he was previously doing. He was working in commercial retail prior. He was charismatic, he could hold a good conversation, but I still couldn't figure out what the fit was. So I kept digging, asking questions, and then I discovered previously, he didn't really want to share this until I dug in, that he worked as a journalist. And I thought, gosh, what a perfect fit. He just studied cyber. He could write a good story about it. And so, if I didn't dig in and ask those questions and was consistently curious, I wouldn't have acted on bringing him onto the team. The next component that I practice essentially on a daily basis, I think being in this field for so many years, and being in sales, you face a lot of ups and downs, a lot. And I think that it's an emotional roller coaster that is definitely not for the faint of heart. We face a lot of unconscious biases where people assume that salespeople are mean, or that we don't add value, or that, we're just here slinging some kind of product for this one time, right? And don't really care about you as a client. I think tackling these biases are difficult because they come across negatively and it can impact how you actually respond. How I tackle it is I approach each day and each opportunity as a way for me to grow. To me, growth is about anything. You could be elevating your skill sets, you could be dealing with adverse situations, you could be expanding your knowledge. There's always something you can do every day to grow. And you could do this by reading every day, connecting with people, learning from their experiences, listening to podcasts, what have you. I think we have the luxury of having so many different means of access to learning every day. In my years and many years, I've been through a lot of rejection, and I think if any of you are also in the sales field, you've also probably been through rejection. I don't think it just exists in sales. I think it exists in you pursuing a career. I think it exists in just any of the biases that we face as women. And I think when I'm down in the dumps, I always try to find the lesson learned. If you've been in sales, you've probably been told one day that a sale was going to happen, and the next day it doesn't. And I think that can really bring you down in the dumps. You've got pressures of management coming at you, asking you to close that sale, and if you've already made some verbal commitments, now what do you do the next day now that they've said it wasn't going to happen? But taking out of the negativity, you take that as a lessons learned and realize that the next time, what I needed to do was better understand the budget allocation priorities. What I needed to do was really understand, who this person was and whether his level of power was, or his level of word was able to execute what I was looking for. So lots of things that I needed to action after learning from, that adverse situation. So embrace the mistakes. Understand that you can be better at anything you do every day, because every encounter is an opportunity for you to learn. I'd love to go to the room and ask, if anybody has any recent lessons that you've learned from any adverse situation. It's a tough one to share. Okay, I'm going to go to an easier one. Does anyone have any? Oh, sorry, I see you over there. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Was it pricing? Was it value add? Whatever it is, so that you can get to yes next time.
Yeah.
And just learn the lesson, right? You just gotta keep plugging away, because be it sales or customer facing, you're gonna get those no's constantly. So you gotta build a really strong shell and just work through it.
That's great, thank you.
Hi, and mine was more about opportunities. Don't get discouraged. There's lots of opportunities out there. It's tough when you're going to 4 or 5 interviews, interviewing with very senior people, and then you think you're there and you don't get the call. And they don't even give you a reason why. And that's quite frustrating, and it can get you down in the dumps, but you just gotta, as they say, pull up your socks and try again.
Yeah, absolutely. And see how you could have done something differently the next time, right? I think those are great. Those are all really great. The other question I had for the group was, are there any podcasts that you guys could share with the group on that you listen to that could help you grow? I can't share any growth podcasts. I listen to, I'm more curious for me. I listen to Smartless. I don't know if you know about Smartless, but anyways, it's Jason Bateman and a bunch of folks just talking to other celebrities and about their lives. So that's sort of my guilty pleasure.
Hello.
Hi.
I have 2. One is the one with Jay Shetty.
Okay.
He wrote Think Like a Monk, and every time he brings, not so much what he has to say, because he tends to repeat everything, but his guests are really good. And then the Oprah one,
Okay.
Oprah Soul Cycle or something. Anyway, that's life-changing.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for sharing. I think that's important, right? I mean, we're all here to share with each other. I know I'm up here doing a talk, and as I said earlier, it actually terrified me that I had to do this. And I actually sat in these last couple of weeks sitting here going, what is it that I have to share that likely you guys all probably know? And I think the key is making sure that, you know, we're all here to support each other and help each other grow and help each other advance and also help each other learn, really. So thank you for sharing. The last practice that I follow religiously, as you heard earlier, I have a pretty extensive resume in terms of different jobs that I have done. And one of the things that I've learned was that you have to align with allies and also connect with a mentor. I know it seems super obvious, but in every role I've taken on, I think always finding your internal allies, understanding their objectives, their goals, and making sure that you both know what is there to motivate each other. You can really help each other propel forward. Not just allies within your role, but allies within to help you as an individual. Especially as women in the field, we need allies to also propel, you know, who we are and our place within an organization. My mantra is, you never win or lose alone, ever. I think that there is a matter of, you know, responsibility and accountability that everybody will have to help you propel forward, and there's always a part for somebody. One of the other pieces that I also believe is the key to your success is having a mentor. My view is always to have a mentor, not only inside your workplace, but outside as well. I have this one friend, actually, who started out as a colleague back in TELUS. We were both inside sales representatives. She joined about 6 months behind me. And with that, you know, I was helping her a lot, helping her understand the role, and essentially call it, you know, mentoring her, but even though it was only 6 months advance of where she started. She was eager, wanted to learn, and, you know, has since become my mentor. Fast forward to today, she's one of the most successful salespersons I know. She's winning constantly. I think she's even in Ireland right now because she won yet another trip with the organization she's with. But I would say that, you know, she has now become one of my biggest confidants when it comes to personal and business advice. She's constantly giving me guidance on how I should make certain career decisions. She actually helped guide me to the career I am in today at Microsoft. And she would often say, thank goodness we are not competing against each other on the same accounts, because she would never want to compete against me. And the reality is, I actually am so scared to compete against her, because I know she would win any day. But outside of the workplace, I think inside your workplace it's important to have a mentor. I think finding your mentor inside your workplace can help you navigate how you can elevate your skill sets internally and also elevate and evolve your own career within the establishment. I think that having mentors and allies really, really will help contribute to your growth and ultimately make you accountable. I think a lot of folks can aspire to be and achieve certain things, but you're only accountable to yourself for the most part. But when you have somebody else helping you and championing you through, it will actually help you propel forward. I had one last question that I may have powered through this session, so maybe you guys will have a lot of free time. But I guess I'd like to ask, how many of you have allies here with you today at this conference? That's great. And how many of you are mentors today? That's awesome. And is anyone here looking for a mentor? Amazing. How many of you are open to mentoring? So I ask that you look around, because the folks that are the folks that are looking for mentors, you just saw there's a whole room of you, and I think that this is what we can be here to achieve together, continue to help each other grow, and continue to support each other. Thank you. That's all for me. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I really appreciate you taking the time to attend. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask maybe the group, what are some of your biggest challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges people are facing? Because obviously you came to this session because it was about sales and a way of, maybe perhaps helping your career. But what specifically? Because I would love to mentor and help, but, maybe we can share some of our challenges, and that could be a helpful thing.
Hi. So I think confidence sometimes, especially when you're in a room with predominantly men, no offense, gentlemen, but being a woman and presenting and showing that you have a product or services that you can offer that will help them. Sometimes I feel defeated in a room when more than often than not we might know a little bit more and able to educate them and help them in a good way. So I think confidence is a struggle sometimes.
I could answer that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, I worked in this industry for 38 years, and all of my clients have been males, men, pretty predominantly. So the thing that you have to do is you have to focus less on men and women and more about the problem at hand. What's the burning problem? What's the burning platform? Once you understand what the burning platform is, you find a way to solve that problem. And when you're working from a position of easing a pain or solving a problem, all of these sort of, costumes of men, women, VP, CEO, they kind of fall away. Because at the end of the day, people want to achieve their goals. And if you're going to help them to achieve their goals, then you have to focus on the problem at hand. And then you don't even have to be confident, because you're focused on specific things that because of the company you work for, the products you sell, or the services that you sell, how those products or services are going to help somebody. If they want to listen to you, wonderful. You can have a great discussion, you can have discourse, you can have collaboration. If they're not interested in listening to you, I don't think any amount of confidence is going to change that situation. So focus on the outcomes, focus on the problems, and and also provide evidence as to how you can help that organization by maybe talking to some of your other clients, and you will find that people will instantly see you as credible.
I love that. And I think the key is to ask questions, right?
Yeah, me again. What are you talking about? We're chatting. You didn't reach from me.
I thought you were getting it from me.
Which leads to knowing your voice and empowering yourself, Mary. So, 20 plus years in the industry, absolutely leading to your talents, leaning into your knowledge, but you're gonna find yourself in a situation, sorry man, where you're gonna be in a room and, you know, it's getting better, but you could be the only female in a group of men at a meeting and you're all shooting ideas. And yes, it's a team effort, but will your contribution be acknowledged at the end of the day? And if you don't use your voice and advocate for yourself, or within your organization, find a tribe of women who can help you navigate through, then you're gonna find yourself stuck in that spot for a while, and you're gonna quickly become unhappy. So that's why it's really important, you know, practice it with your friends, you know, shoot back and forth how to speak for yourself, how to present your ideas in a way that you know down the line you're gonna get rewarded, be it monetarily or with job opportunities, because it does happen where, you know, I don't wanna say take advantage, it is taking advantage, but that your contribution won't be acknowledged to the same extent.
I couldn't agree with that more. And I think one of the hardest things that I had to overcome throughout the years was not getting angry and respond so emotionally because somebody didn't pay attention, because you knew deep down what you had to say was far more important, or maybe not important, maybe that's but just it added and it contributed to the conversation and they weren't listening. And I think one of the things that I've learned throughout the years was you have to remove that emotion and find a different way to say it. I think that, you know, as you said, it's getting a lot better. We all have a seat at the table, but use your seat, use your voice, because if you're not speaking up, then, you know, you'll lose that seat, and you'll lose that ability for somebody to want to listen to your contribution.
And I was just going to add, obviously, be prepared and know your stuff, right? So if you know your product, your solution inside out, then it's your confidence comes with that knowledge,
Yes.
right? So if you can go in and share and be able to present to a crowd, I think once you're in that zone and you're talking about the solution you know well, you'll have no problem with that confidence. But also, don't be afraid if that person asks you a question and you don't know the answer. Don't be afraid to say, sorry, I can't answer that. I'll get back to you. Do not try and fumble through and make stuff up. So just like, don't be afraid to say you don't know, because there's going to be times where you truly don't, and you're best to just get back to that person as opposed to trying to skate through it. Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I think you lose your credibility much faster the minute you try to pretend that you know something, and people respect it much more when you're authentic and honest.
Yeah, the other thing too is you need to know your audience as well. So if you're speaking to a team of engineers, your approach is going to be very, very different than if you're speaking to a group of senior executives or CFOs. You have to tailor your message to your audience. So if you're dealing with engineers or very technical IT people, your message has to be extremely detailed and follow a certain form of logic. If you're dealing with executives, they want outcomes and they want evidence of outcomes, and they want information given to them very, very quickly. If you're dealing with finance people, they want numbers. They want to see the numbers, they want to see the logic behind the numbers, and again, they want to even challenge the numbers. So you have to know your audience, because having a voice is extremely important, but your voice has to be tailored to the audience or the table that you're sitting at.
Thank you.
I just had a question. I think it could be pretty different than what everyone talked about. But since we talked about mentorship, I think I'll be honest, I think the only thing that I missed here about the event, that nobody talked about the youth, I think. So
The which, sorry?
the youth, people who just graduated, or people who are stepping into the field.
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody is having experiences over 20 years, 25 years, and that is something that I aspire to look at, and I want to be one of you. But I just feel we people, not just talking about myself, but we people who come out of the universities, or we are recent graduates, and we have that passion to just step into that field and be one of you. And I think, I speak at the universities too for undergrads, and I think they're so much more hesitant, and they actually need mentors like you all. So how should people actually approach? And also, when we talk about cybersecurity is a big field, and we need people in that field, but then there is another question that comes again for the youth, that I don't think there are much opportunities, because again, even if you look at any opportunity, it says you need that much of an experience. Any job posting that you open up, it says 7 years of experience, 10 years of experience. So how do you expect a person who just want to step in, get that 25 years of experience, come and sit here and just speak and give us guidance? How should that person go about?
I think you have a couple of folks to answer. I'll start first, and I think other folks will love to answer your question. So I know that there's lots of programs out there with different organizations that have internships. I know the Catalyst programs align themselves, the Ryerson Catalyst program aligns themselves with Deloitte and also aligns themselves with Microsoft. And I think, the key is getting out there and networking with the different folks that are your conduits to those organizations. The second piece I would also factor in is, even if some job descriptions have a level of recommendation that they want certain years of experience, don't be afraid to apply. I think one of our biggest obstacles that we face is that you'll see a job description. I mean, if there's a huge gap, but you'll see a job description, and if you feel you don't match, all of the skill sets on the list, we don't apply. I can tell you that it's statistically, men have more courage to apply for things that they maybe 60%, 70% fit in that job description, right? And I think that connecting with folks on LinkedIn, connecting with all of these lovely ladies here that are in the profession, can certainly help you and propel yourself forward, because a lot of what we have to do today is networking. That's really, COVID kind of took that away from us for a little bit, but we have the luxury of being here. You're here, and as I was saying earlier, and I think I'm going to ask again, any other folks that are willing to mentor, to raise your hand, and so that folks can look around and see, how you could expand beyond the groups that you're already in. I know there was other folks that had their hands raised.
Yeah, Shelley, so I've been around for a while, but I'm going to tell you, if you want to get around and be known around, you got to look around and you got to ask around. Because if you're not asking people for what you want, I can't read your mind. Do you want a mentor? Ask.
Yeah.
If you meet people here this week and you're like, man, I want to be like her, I want to know how she got to where she got to, or I want to get to where she got to, or he got to, it could be a he, then you need to reach out and say, I admire what you do, I'd like to learn more about what you do. So I'll tell you a little story. I once took an Uber in Seattle, and the Uber driver was talking to me, and I was asking him questions because I'm curious, and I said, so what are you doing? Is this your only job? And he said, no, I am training because I'm going to work in cybersecurity. And I said, well, that's cool. So I said, so do you know where you'd like to work in cybersecurity? I'd really like to get a job at Microsoft, he said. This is a Microsoft. And I said, really? I said, well, who have you talked to at Microsoft? He said, I haven't talked to anybody yet because I got to do all my training. And I said, you know what? I think you could probably figure out somebody at Microsoft and go and talk to them and let them know, because they're always interested in people that, number one, choose their company to work for and want to train. And so I said, if you have trouble finding people at Microsoft, I know a few, so I can do an introduction to you. And I've never had anybody from any company say, Shelley, don't introduce me to anybody, because I don't want to hire anybody. No one has ever said that to me. So I sent it out. They connected. I don't know where it ever went, but I made that connection for him because he knew where he wanted to work. So if there's a company you want to work with, figure out how you can get in that company. Go on LinkedIn, look who works there. You know, talk to people around here. I saw someone this morning. Shay, is she in here? No. I said, so what are you doing now? I'm looking for a job. So she came to the table and I said, well, where do you want to work? She said, well, government. There's somebody else sitting at the table. Well, do you have a resume? I'd like to connect you with someone. We're hiring. But if you're not telling people what you're looking for, people don't know. And people are good, and people want to help people and see other people be successful. So, you know, I've been a nurse. I've been a social worker. I've been in public life. I've been a VP for companies. I work in cybersecurity now. And all of that happened because I talk to people. I'm curious about the world. And so I encourage anyone that's new in the workforce, be curious about the world, because I don't know a workplace that is not hiring in the cybersecurity field right now. So congratulations and best of luck.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would like to just add one note. Sometimes you feel like you are overqualified for some position because you've been in academia for many years, especially if you have, let's say, PhD in cybersecurity, and people saying that, oh, okay, you have that, but you don't have any work experience. So you have to start from step one, and okay, because you're in that position, you cannot start from point one. So I found it, even I talked to some people, I found it difficult to just start from the point that your resume say where you should be, which is in contrast with what the industry demand is. So I don't know that situation, what you should do.
I mean, when you're pursuing a job, I think it's always key to start with why you're there and where you want to be. I mean, resumes are really a point of reference, right, in terms of the kind of experience and commitment that you have towards certain areas. But I think what comes across to most folks when you're having the conversations is being very clear on what you're looking to achieve and being able to articulate that. I think for that's what we get afraid upon. We're afraid of, you know, submitting a piece of paper and then it going nowhere. And I think, and I think it was Shelley, and I think as Shelley said, like, the key is to ask for it and just make yourself known as a person, as opposed to a piece of paper that has, you know, a list of criteria that I can guarantee you some AI software in the back end is doing some mismatch, right, in terms of what they're trying to connect you with. But that's the key. Make sure that you can articulate what you're trying to do and what you're achieving. This field is the most amazing field to me right now because there's so many different facets of what you can do. You can threat hunt one day, you can do sales, you can, you know, focus on one specific technology, you could deep dive into that and then decide to go to a different part within cyber. So many different opportunities. And I think for any organization that turns an eye and says, well, I don't want you here because you're only there, is maybe some, you know, maybe you just need to find something else that is a different fit for you. Yes.
I have a response to that question as well.
There's a microphone behind you.
I have a response to your question as well, and that is, I'll give you a story. Actually, I'll tell you a real story because it was one of my clients who is also a good friend. They were in a role, they were a CISO at a major financial services organization. And they got there, you know, not necessarily in a direct line. They worked in other roles that are not CISO related. And to make a long story short, they lost their job, like they were let go. And it was for political reasons. It wasn't for their capacity or capabilities. So they were extremely qualified. And it took that person about a year to find a role. They ended up at another financial services organization, not in a CISO role, but in a lower level role. It was a VP role, and it was reporting into the CIO. And that person could have said, I'm not going to take that role because it's not equivalent to what I had before. I need to only look at CISO roles. But that person did take that role, and within a few years, they were at the CISO role within that organization. So sometimes the shortest distance between 2 points is not always a straight line. Sometimes you have to take another role, but if the culture of the organization is good and they value results and they value integrity, then they will recognize your accomplishments. And you have to, of course, like to the beautiful lady behind you who said about voice, yes, your voice being important, you have to be vocal in an assertive and respectful way in communicating your successes, your achievements, your accomplishments. So it's a combination thereof. It's not always a slam dunk, but generally speaking, nothing is ever lost. Even if you don't gain the position eventually that you want, you might be able to apply in another company, but because you've had certain experiences, now you have that ability, you have that foundation. Yeah, you're welcome.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to go back to the topic on youth. Myself, I'm still in university. I actually just started my very first internship ever. And going back to the question about like experiences and challenges that I've been going through, one thing I noticed about myself this past month since I started is really being self-aware in doing things and so focused on doing things the right way rather than just doing them. For example, if I'm having like coffee chats, I'm so focused on like, am I asking the right question? Am I using the right language? And a lot of you guys talked about getting that confidence and building it from the knowledge that you have, but starting like very early in my career and in security, like I don't really possess that knowledge, and I feel like I'm spending a lot of time being so hyper-focused on that and not allowing myself to like immerse myself in that whole experience. So if I can just get maybe some input on that, and if anyone can share any their experiences or stories. Thank you.
So I have a couple, I can share two, maybe each one. So for yours, for getting that experience, I've been in cybersecurity for 16 years, but not technical, and I've changed the type of work I do, and every time I changed, it was because I volunteered to do the kind of work I wanted to do eventually. So like I'm now in marketing, so I tell stories about cybersecurity. I volunteered to write for the Tell Us Wise program, which is like a free resource, but it was on my own time, wasn't gonna get attention, but I was proving to myself that I could do it, and I was proving to my future employer that I could do it. So it's a great way to get those skills and to prove it without getting like experience. And I'm doing it now, like I volunteer, I'm on a board of a charity. I'm demonstrating, hopefully, my people leader skills, because that's where I wanna go, right? And for you, I mean, I never feel ready and I rarely feel confident, but I force it. And I'm also lucky to have people around me who are not even pushing me forward. Sometimes it feels like they're drop kicking me forward into the next thing, right? And if you know that that's something that's hard for you, express that to people. If you develop a relationship and you feel comfortable, you're like, listen, I like to really dig in my heels and take a long time or wait until I'm super frustrated to make a change or, forced to the next thing. Then they'll pull you forward or at least prod at you and be like, it's time for a conversation. Like, what are you doing now? How are you growing now, right? So you can make your weaknesses known too. Maybe don't broadcast them to everyone you meet, but people you trust and just be like, I'm bad at this. Can you help me get better at this? And they should.
I think what you're hearing too, right, from a lot of the experienced folks in the room is authenticity. Just be you. I think in the end, like if you honestly are just driving forward to grow your knowledge and you're asking and directing those questions in that way, no one's ever going to fault you for it. Just be you. Just ask the questions, and people, as some other leaders are saying, always want to help. There's always somebody that's going to want to help you, as long as you're authentic and not trying to put yourself in a position where, nobody likes people who position themselves as a know-it-all or assuming that they already have prior knowledge in a lot of areas. Just be you. You're going to get it. You're going to get there. You took the first step. You asked a question in this room of many experienced ladies. I can guarantee you can find somebody to connect with today as well. Maybe an additional mentor outside of your network, but being authentic is the key.
Thank you, Vanessa, for the wonderful session. My question is, not a question, like for me, I'll tell about myself. I recently joined Microsoft, and it's been 10 months, and I work as a technical specialist in the cybersecurity field, and I'm new to the field. Even though I did a degree in computer science, I just took one networking course, and that's it. That's my knowledge about it. So now that I've joined Microsoft, and there's like so much to learn about the product, the industry, networking, so many aspects. So the thing that I'm having a hard time is like trying to find work boundaries and how not to work after work hours, because I feel like I have so much to learn that even after work hours, I go home, I study about like different products, and then in the morning, I attend meetings, and it's like the same thing. And I'm trying my best to just cut off work and just get out there and not be too focused, but it's really hard. So if you have any tips and tricks to help me just have more balance, please let me know.
I'm sure lots of people have your methodology, but my methodology is I really do sit down and write down what I want to achieve on a daily basis. And I have like a 40-60 rule, right? 60% of it is spent propelling my job sales forward, right? Whether that's moving an opportunity one step forward, whether it's a meeting I need to set, whether it's getting information out to a customer. So I spend about 60% of my time doing that. And the 40% of the time is organizing me and figuring out what I need to do personally and creating those boundaries. I think that, if you asked me this 2 years ago, I didn't have those boundaries because I think that COVID did that to all of us, where when you're forced to work from home, your day just continues to ramble through, but maybe not in half pajamas and full pajamas for the remainder of the day. But you really just need to just draw the line, because the learning is endless. It's absolutely endless. Like, we talk about not knowing the products. I don't know them all. I'll be honest. I don't know, half the things that a lot of folks do.
I'm going to say something controversial based on almost 40 years of experience. When you're learning, when you're building your career, there are no boundaries. You got to work really, really, really hard. And sometimes you have to work harder than the next person. Sometimes because you're a woman, sometimes. Not all the time. I've raised children, been in senior roles in large companies, also started my own company 28 years ago. And I can tell you, it's a never-ending job. You do have to prioritize, and I agree with you 100%. You have to be very good at prioritizing. But there will be times when you're going to have to work like crazy. The key is not to work like that all the time. It's kind of like a marathon. You have to maintain a pretty good pace. You can't sprint all the time. So you have to pick and choose when you're going to put more effort and when you're going to hold back a little bit. But especially starting your career, I'm afraid you're going to have to really push yourself. If you want to make a name for yourself, if you want to build your career, that's just the nature of business. But if you're passionate about what you do, it shouldn't feel like work anyways.
I think there was someone behind you.
I think there's no such thing as work-life balance. You decide what that looks like. And some days the whole world's upside down, and your family needs you more some days than your work life does. And in this industry, like some people were talking about, their education and they don't have any practical skills. Well, I'm going to tell you something. 2 weeks ago, I was in Baltimore, Maryland, for a conference, and the Pentagon was there doing a presentation, and they brought their key advisor on ChatGPT, AI, and machine learning. Guess what? It was a 16-year-old. He had no degree. He didn't even finish high school, and he was the advisor in the Pentagon on that. And you know why? Because he plays Net Wars, and he plays all these capture the flag games, and he got noticed at a game. And they had some talks with him, and they challenged him, and he was able to meet their challenges, and they hired him. So one of the things that's key in workplaces. I do workforce development with organizations all across North America. And guess what? Those that are talking to the young people about, we've got a pension for you. I don't know any young person that's thinking about working anywhere for the next 20 years. So they have to lose that language. They have to get to the language where you can come and work here and you can go over there and work and then you can come back here, the boomerang. Because the next generation is going to be a boomerang generation for work.
Yeah.
And they want to know what practical skills you have, and there are all kinds, like WESIS is down the hall. They have all kind of events where you can do net wars and just learn. So when you go for an interview now, they're asking you, what do you do in your spare time? And if you say, I knit and watch Netflix, you're probably low on the list to get a relook. But if you say, you know, I belong to some associations, I like doing any kind of net wars, I love gaming, they're like, star, star, star. We want to talk to this person. Oh, and by the way, what's their education level? That is because they're trying to fill jobs so fast, they can't wait for the people that have to go to university for 4 or 5 years anymore. They're hiring the people that are playing and doing it today. So keep in mind what you're doing on your downtime, I guess, for fun, because employers are looking at that very seriously in today's market.
That's true. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that one of the biggest things that we do or don't do, and I would say COVID has really changed this, is the notion of balance. I mean, you hear a lot about having work-life balance. I think that went out the door when the internet came into our lives. And so really the thing to do at the beginning is, in addition to working hard during those periods or sprints when you need to, is also to draw the line for yourself, because if you don't, nobody will. And knowing where you can, what you can offer, but also in a way that's going to allow you to grow as a person. So if you're somebody who knows that you can work straight for 3 to 4 hours and be really productive, but then you need maybe an hour off, know that and look for organizations that value flexibility. So traditional work has always been about, 9 to 5, 8 to 4. That may not work for everybody, and a lot of organizations are seeing that. We're seeing asynchronous work come in because we know that certain people are more productive in certain ways. So as work becomes more agile and as certain roles come in, especially within this industry, it's not 9 to 5. So really look at where you thrive as a person, start to understand where you're productive, and then try to work for organizations that will value that and don't require necessarily bums in a seat for 8 hours a day. So a lot of it is self-learning, and when you're young, it's difficult to know that, but you learn that over time, and carving that out for yourself at the beginning. Like for example, perhaps, maybe you like to do yoga or you like to work out. Carve that time out for yourself because nobody else will.
So just to add to that, I recently just did what you're doing right now. Like about 5 years ago, I was new, and I wasn't new, but it had been about 5 years or so, and I was kind of building. And then I went through that life transition where now I'm a parent, and my life looks entirely different. I can't really chase it like I used to. I've got other things to chase. So the way that I try to think about it or prioritize it now is actually building on what you just said. I had a conversation with my employer and I said, look, I know what I need to produce and I need a little bit more flexibility to do it. And then in order to prioritize my day, I think, what do I want to show the children that I'm raising and the people who are working for me? What do I want to show them? What do I want them to take away? And how do I want their lives to look? And if I don't exemplify that, they're going to try to do exactly what I'm doing. And if I'm running myself into the ground, my employees are going to run themselves into the ground. And then I'm not going to have any employees to work with because they'll all be dying. So I try to think about, what do I want to see the people that I'm responsible for? What do I want their lives to look like? And I try to make decisions around that so that I'm exemplifying that for them. So that's kind of how, and it doesn't work all the time. And sometimes you're going to be on a meeting and at a baseball game at the same time. And, it's going to happen. But think about the way that your kids and the people that you're working around are seeing you and what they're taking from that and how healthy that looks, and it kind of helps you prioritize things. And yeah, just embrace that flexibility that we have now with the internet and the ability to move around. Now, 5 years ago, I would not have been able to go to my kids' school play at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now I can. It's a really nice thing, but it does mean that I'm on the phone or I'm working from 7 to 8 at night, and you just embrace it.
Yeah, that's true. I love the participation, and I really appreciate it because you guys really made this experience a lot easier for me in terms of having a talk with you guys. I think we're at the point where we need to wrap up. So thank you, all of you. I think there's lots of folks here to learn from each other. So thank you.